In 1740, the British, under the command of Governor James Oglethorpe of Georgia, launched an attack on St. Augustine. Now, what made this attack unique was Oglethorpe was able to bypass the Spanish's primary defense, which was the Castillo De San Marcos. Now, he was able to bypass these defenses by using an unguarded inlet about 15 miles south of St. Augustine. Oglethorpe and his forces would sail up this unguarded inlet, blockade Spain's supply route, and lay a 39-day siege on the city of St. Augustine. Now, after 39 days, Spain would break the siege and be victorious. They soon realized that this unguarded inlet that acted as a secondary source of supplies was vulnerable. So, just after the siege in 1740, Spain would begin construction of Fort Matanzas. Now, part of what makes Fort Matanzas so unique is it's on a barrier island. So we're gonna have to hop on one of these ferries and make our way over to check it out. Now, this is Fort Matanzas, and construction began in 1740 and it would finish in 1742. Now, part of what makes this fort so unique is what it's made out of. This is called coquina, which is very common in this area. And it's nothing more than fossilized shells and other invertebrates compressed. And what they would do is they would cut it out from Anastasia Island. Now, when this fort was finally built, they would coat it in a lime substance. This fort would see action in 1742. Just before its completion, the British would attempt to sail up the Matanzas Inlet, and cannon fire from this gun deck behind me would drive off those ships, and the British would never attempt to attack St. Augustine again. So before we go into the fort, just giving you a quick outside view. When they built this was a sandbar in the 1740s. So what they did was they chopped down logs, they sank the logs in the ground, covered it with dirt, and they built the fort on top of that. So it created a nice sound structure. And here is your gun deck, and your officer's quarters is right there. And in the officer's quarters, they also have the powder magazine, which is along this wall. And we're going to work our way up the gun deck, up these steps, trying not to trip. So this gun deck would have 5 cannon, a couple 6-pounders, and an 18-pounder. Now, 2 of these here are replicas, and this is actually an original cannon that was here. And this is a Spanish 8-pounder, which had a range of up to 1.5 miles. Now, back in 1742, the Matanzas Inlet would have been a little farther north in this direction. So this is why the fort was built here. So this door here, this is where the enlisted men would sleep. You had 4 infantry and 2 artillerymen. And upstairs would be where your officer would sleep. Now, the fort was built on a barrier island, so they didn't have access to fresh water. So they had this cistern, which would collect rainwater. So we're working our way into the first floor. This is where they keep some of their equipment and where they would eat. And this is where the enlisted men would sleep. They would keep 4 infantrymen, 2 artillerymen, and then they would have an officer's quarters upstairs. And these are different things they'd use for the cannons. One would help pack the powder and ball. This one here is a giant sponge, which they dip in water, so the powder wouldn't explode in the barrel. And here we have some of the different types of munitions they'd use in the cannons. See if you can see that a little better. This one here is grape shot. Pretty much like a giant shotgun shell. Now, in the early 1900s, we almost lost this fort to Mother Nature. So this is what it looked like in 1912, before the National Park Service took it over and launched a huge restoration project to its current image today. Now, before Fort Matanzas, they did have some of these simpler fortifications along the coast of Florida, but obviously, as you can see, they wouldn't offer much resistance if attacked. And here we have the officers' quarters. A little more spacious than the enlisted barracks, but that is not uncommon. And in the same room is the powder magazine that we talked about earlier in the video. They'd keep their food, ammunition, and powder here out of the elements. And this ladder here would be the observation deck. Now these windows are super important. Not only could they provide a defensive position, as you can see, but for ventilation. Now in 1741, the British would make an attempt to stop construction of this fort. They attacked with a handful of ships, and they would exchange fire with a Spanish ship that was here guarding the construction, and a cannonball actually hit the Spanish ship and killed 2 Spanish soldiers. And here you have an expanded view of the fort. Here's those wood pilings where they built their foundation. And from the top of the fort, they can see almost 7 miles out. So definitely a pretty imposing structure. Although it's small, definitely commanded a view and controlled the area. So that is just way too cool. This is by far one of my favorite places in Florida. Not only because of the history, but of the scenery. I mean, we're on a barrier island that used to be a sandbar, crystal clear water. And this fort, as you can see behind me, overlooks the entire area. It's just awesome. Definitely have to come here to see it.